A warm welcome to episode 16 of the Lost for Words podcast. I am your host Jason, and this week I am joined by Baillie Soryia Siddique, who shares her story about her life as the councillor of the Southside Central ward of Glasgow City Council. The Southside Central ward is noteworthy as it contains the area of Govanhill, which has been embroiled in controversy over the past year or so, mainly relating to allegations of sex trafficking rings that operate from within the area. Baillie Siddique discusses these allegations head on, as well as going into detail about all things involved in being the elected member of Govanhill. We also discuss her route into politics via teaching and lecturing, the issue of Islamophobia, the recent Scottish Parliament election, as well as a deep dive into Glasgow's fight to be ready for the upcoming COP26 event being hosted here in November. This is a really insightful conversation, and I will speak to you at the other side. A quick housekeeping note before we get started. Please leave a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Apple, Google, Spotify, Podbean or any other platform. It's the best way the podcast can grow and better content can be produced for you, the listener. It's your listening experience that matters the most. But enough from me, now on to today's episode of Lost for Words. How you doing? You okay?
Alright, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, You been doing anything nice today?
Honestly, I forgot it was recess, can you believe it? I just kind of, this is the first week of recess and I've just got loads of stuff happening this week, so hopefully I'll get some time next week, but the weather's so nice, you don't want to miss it, you know?
That's very true, actually.
How about you? You're studying as well, is that right?
So I'm a teacher. So we've just finished up for.
Oh, where do you teach?
Yeah.
Right. What do you teach?
Primary school, so a bit of everything.
Enjoying it?
I love it. I wouldn't change it for anything. Yeah, it's been a tough couple of years, but I think we're on for a good year next year. Hopefully, without any sort of COVID interruption.
Honestly, it's just been quite a year, isn't it? I mean, I teach as well, so I get you.
It's been really tough. I think the kids they're often the ones that are missed out in all the.
You worry about them, but some of them are so resilient. It's so impressive.
Yeah, definitely. They're a credit to themselves. They really are. And they've proven it the last couple of years.
I really feel for them. They missed out on so much. But fingers crossed, this is us through the worst of it. Hopefully.
Seems to be. I hope for a normal year next year. Anyway, right. I'll just fire in then to get us, and then we can get outside and enjoy the nice weather. So, tell me a bit about where you grew up and a bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I was born and brought up in Anderston. It was a tenement. I went to Anderston Primary School. I went to Woodside Secondary, which is now the Gaelic School. I wasn't so affluent at the time, I can assure you, but yeah, so that's where I was brought up, and my dad was a ticket collector in the railway. My mum was bringing up 5 children at that time when she was ticket collecting at the beginning of quite early on, and then my dad set up his own business as well, so my mum's pretty much worked as well and brought up a family. So yeah, both of my parents predominantly worked, and yeah, so quite a nice community, I would say, and just in my, I've got predominantly positive memories.
So when you went through school, did you go through always with the intention of being like a teacher or a lecturer?
The honest answer to that is that I remember that when I was 6 year at school, and chemistry was chemistry teacher always said to me, look, Soryia, which university are you going to study chemistry? And before that, I really hadn't thought about studying chemistry. I was good at chemistry, and she felt like she obviously saw me in that sector. And so she had kind of planted a seed. Then I filled in my UCAS form, and obviously other teachers get to hear about what you've applied for. And my modern studies teacher said to me that I would have a word with you. Would you come out? And I said, oh, that's fine. I wasn't always in trouble, I was like, oh, I don't know. And he says, I heard you're applying to study chemistry at university. And I said, yeah, that's right. He says, I think you made a mistake. I think you're I think your forte and I think your strengths lie in politics. He says of you, I think, why don't you reconsider? Have a wee think about it, have a wee rethink about it. And I think I thought about it for like not very long, because I could see myself maybe studying chemistry and working in, say, as a teacher. I could see maybe myself, working in industry, but I couldn't see myself in a political role. There wasn't any role models that I could see myself as. You say it's really important that you can see yourself in a specific, and I honestly couldn't see myself. I remember thinking, what would my job prospects be at the end of that? I remember thinking, could I see myself in Parliament? No. Could I see myself in local authority? No. So I stuck to studying chemistry. Then went on to do an MSc in pharmaceutical analysis at Strathclyde, did a PhD. So that's how it kind of panned out. And here I am. I love science as well. That's something that I'm passionate about as well, the STEM sector. And I'm an elected member as well, so it's strange how things pan out.
Do you not think though it's really valuable that I would hope for any politician that this thing, quote unquote, real life experience that you weren't always politically minded in terms of your job, that you've got that good background of being in the classroom, in the lecture hall, doing something you loved, and then politics has come afterwards. How important a grounding is that for you?
Absolutely. And you know what? I worked in grocery shops, I worked in fruit shops, I worked in retail, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. So I feel like when I'm sitting in a committee meeting or I'm, at full council, there's a lived experience. And you're a teacher as well in the classroom. The lived experience of what you're seeing day to day and what over the years that you see that is based on your experience is so important. And it's something that when I was teaching and I wasn't elected, there were so many things that I could think, why are we not doing this? We should be doing this differently. Things could change here. And that's something that, I guess inspired me, was my lived experience of actually being in the classroom, being in the lecture hall, and actually coming from humble upbringings, and I look back and, what I was brought up in Anderson would be considered overcrowded housing. I faced those inequalities. So, it doesn't do you any harm to, that lived experience is important and it drives you forward in some ways.
Absolutely. And just a quick question about the teaching. What would you say your highlight was in your teaching career? Is there anything that sticks out to you and makes you think, I was really proud of myself for doing that?
I would say in teaching, there's been so many experiences of when learners come into the classroom and, they're maybe not so confident, especially like adult learners in the further education sector. They're maybe left school without qualifications because they've come from chaotic backgrounds. They'll maybe share their life experiences. It's been about 10 years since I've been back in education and I was a carer for my mum, or, whatever life that the experiences that they've been through, and they maybe decided, or life has been, that they've not been able to go straight into FE or HE, and they've made that really important decision in their life, sometimes quite a difficult decision to make, and they say that I left my job, I'm here, but I'm really quite nervous about it, I'm quite scared, I gave up a job, I've got children, I'm going back into education because I want a better life for myself and my children. And my children are at school, I'm back in education, and I almost feel like I'm learning with them, but I'm really nervous, I'm quite scared about it. And the challenges, and just watching them flourish over time. Start off with a sense of nervousness, but over time you see them flourish, and they go on to university. From FE, they come back to see you, they maybe become a podiatrist or a physiotherapist or a pharmacist. And it's just amazing seeing them go through that journey. There's just, what a satisfaction that gives you. I love that. That is really, these are my highlights, and seeing them flourish and achieve the best to their potential. It's a great feeling. I don't think anything can match that in terms of in education when you get that experience.
100%. Cannot argue with that. So you went from being teacher and then you are now a councillor, and you're a Labour councillor. When did you realise the Labour Party was the party for you?
As well, I was doing my PhD, and I was doing my PhD, and I started to face, like I said, I've faced inequality. It's been part of my life and barriers. I started to experience Islamophobia at that point. It was during the Twin Tower incident, and Islamophobia became more prevalent. Something, I experienced racism, but actually experiencing Islamophobia around some international incidents that took place, extreme incidents, terrorist incidents that were equated with Islam, and seeing that and how that panned out for me, I realised more and more that I wanted to get on with my life in sense of, I was brought up. I mean, my parents were socially conscious. They weren't politically active, inverted commas, but they were looking at, we were brought up to look out for our neighbours, look out for the underdog. And I remember going to George Square marching against poll tax. I remember marching against the Iraq War. But these are the kind of things that we did when we were growing up. To me, that was the norm. So I was socially conscious throughout my life anyway, and standing up for what I believed in, and when I saw injustices throughout my life. But when I started to experience it more and more, when comments were made and so forth, I realised that I need to be more and more active.
Yeah.
And then it was about a party that resonated with me in terms of equality, and the values that resonated with me, and I joined the Labour Party. So that was about 15 years ago. And I joined the Labour Party. I got more and more active in terms of campaigning for candidates who were standing for local council, campaigning for MSP candidates, campaigning for MPs that were starting for Parliament, but never really thought about myself in that role until 2012, when actually was someone said to me, "Have you ever thought of standing?" And I kind of went, "No, because I had a full-time job. I had a full-time job, full-time permanent job in education and further education at that point. And to be honest with you, I worked really hard to get there, because when you start in further education, it's quite well known that you can tend to start with temporary jobs. So I started off temporary part-time jobs in so many different colleges. Sometimes I was at one college at the beginning of the week, another college in the middle of the week, and at the end of the week I was in a different college. And that just seems to be part of how you, not ideally, but that was my lived experience and many lecturers' lived experience. I went from temporary to a full-time permanent contract, and there was that kind of stability, and obviously a kind of a kind of full-time job, and it was something that I was politically active, but never considered myself in that.
Good. And then see, you're talking about the Islamophobia. I did want to ask about that. So see, when you compare, if you're saying that the Twin Towers thing, I'm too young. At the time, I was too young to be aware of sort of racial or religious tensions. But see, when you think about before 9/11 compared to the environment we live in now, has Islamophobia, has it been declining since it spiked, or is there still, would you say, like a nasty underbelly that exists?
I think it exists, and it is prevalent. So when I was at school, I experienced racism, but Islamophobia in my time at school wasn't as prevalent in my experience and from what I remember. But Islamophobia is more, I'm more aware of it. I'm probably more aware of it from my own experiences.
So that's like, in terms of you're saying, I think it's really important to, like, even down the school where I teach, I had primary six just there, Soryia, and one of my favourite things about teaching RE is the bit about other world religions. I think it's really important. Like, I teach in a Catholic school, and I think it's something that's often missing from a lot of children as they grow up, because they're not aware. It's almost the not the bigoted, like the hatred and the dislike comes from a lack of knowledge. And I think when you just educate people, then that helps them. So I think the way that I did, because they missed out on the other world religions last year because COVID. So when we did it this year, and we did Islam, I said to them, right, just on your whiteboard, write down anything that you think you might know. And it was interesting to see the type of things that they come up with. And you're like, whoa, where does that come from? But then when you go through it, and they're only 10, 11, but it opened their mind, and you think, right, well, at least they'll have left here more educated about Islamophobia and Judaism and Buddhism.
Sure. Fantastic. Yeah, I think it, absolutely. I mean, the media.
Yeah.
And, when international incidents happen, when incidents happen that are equated with Islam, that Muslims will be. I know that I remember having a conversation with a mother in Southside Central. She says to me, "I'm so nervous. When there's an incident that takes place and it's equated to Islam, it's called Islamic terrorism or Muslims in the name of Islam. This is a worry for my children because what they experience then, and sometimes at school, sometimes in the local communities, and that's those conversations that we have with education to say, and if a Muslim woman who wears a headscarf, her experience is different. There's a visible presence of her faith, and she can become more of a target. And we've seen you're probably aware of the report that Anna Sarwar's published this week about Islamophobia and the layers of it and how systemic it is. So it is very concerning.
So say what if a terrorist incident occurs, and this is obviously one person or a group of people who carry out the terrorism, and then it's almost that Islam as a collective gets blamed for it. Does it make you feel uncomfortable that you then, or that certain people have to speak out and say, that wasn't carried out on behalf of all of us? Do you think that applies more to Islam and Muslims than it does, say, if it was a quote-unquote white Christian person that carried out a terrorist attack?
When a terrorist attack takes place, it's really disheartening to think the world that we live in, that the dangerous, unfair world that we live in, and there's victims, sadly, from any terrorist attack. And like I said, when it's equated with Islam, then people do feel that sometimes they're left explaining or saying, "Wait a minute, that's not Islam. That's not the Islam that I'm aware of. That's not Islam I follow. That's somebody who's that's misconstrued Islam or is misrepresented Islam," and they're having to deal sometimes with how people get angry, and sometimes people can lash out because of that, because of the misrepresentation, and all Muslims are tarred under that same umbrella, which is and there can be spikes of hate that result from that, which is concerning.
But anyway, we'll move on to your job as a councillor. When you chose to run as a councillor, did you sort of select the Southside Central area, or would the party choose to put you as the candidate for that area?
So I was brought up in Anderston. I moved to the kind of southwest to work. I came to live nearer my workplace, and when I was choosing where to stand, obviously you can stand where you live, you can stand at other areas in Glasgow. Southside Central, I speak 3 languages. It's one of the most diverse areas in Scotland. The inequality and some of the barriers in that area, I feel like I can resonate with it. I feel like it's part of some of my lived experience. And to be able to make a difference, I think there's that opportunity to make a difference in a diverse area where there's challenges. And I think the degree of satisfaction that you get for improving life chances and the quality of life in that area can be satisfying as well.
When you ran in 2012, what was your recollection of the campaign?
Yeah, so I think there was a bit of nervousness when I stood in 2012. I wear a headscarf and I wear one by choice, and there was a few people that potentially thought that, is she going to lose a seat? Is she electable? So there was some of that. But by and large, I would say it was a new experience for me. Campaigning for someone else is completely different compared to campaigning for yourself and actually putting yourself out there and saying, vote for me. It's quite an experience. You feel like you're putting yourself out there. Your face on leaflets, going through doors and posters and so forth. So it was quite a unique experience for me. It was a lot of work. There was highs and lows, but it was successful. I was elected, and here I am today.
I asked this before because I've interviewed one of the councillors and one of the MPs. What's your recollection of being at the count? What's your experience of standing there at the Emirates and waiting on the results coming through?
I remember saying to my campaign team that whatever the result is, whatever it is, we accept it. And, thank you so much for everyone that campaigned for me. I'll be forever indebted for people who've spent time, had come on the doorstep with me and been through this journey with me. And I'll be honest with you, was I expecting to win? Could I confidently say to you that I was going to be elected? Probably not. It was very nerve-wracking. You're watching the count, you're looking at they show you some of the ballot papers that are the spoilt ballots, or they show you ballot papers that are you can sometimes contest because they might say this is not acceptable, and you might contest it and so forth. But yeah, it was nerve-wracking, but positive as well at the end. I would say it's quite.
So I know it's the recess just now, but if it wasn't recess, so say if we go back a couple of weeks, what is a standard week for you as a councillor?
Pandemic, due to the pandemic has changed, so there's more of a hybrid work, more of a model where we're working online and we're working from home. But things have opened up a little bit more, so I have been out and about in the ward a bit more than I was obviously when it was complete lockdown. Community council meeting online potentially. It can be a committee meeting, a full council meeting that we had online. I had a meeting online today as well, which was a Thriving Places board meeting. And people can be taking phone calls. I get casework almost every day. It can be to do with housing, it can be to do with bins, it can be to do with infestation. So these kind of caseworks, dealing with them at a regular basis. And sometimes it's about arranging meetings as well. So I've got a meeting on Friday. And that is to do with issues in a lane in Govanhill. So the residents are having a meeting with myself and some officers. So it can vary. Like I said, pre-pandemic, a lot out and about a lot more. I could be going to events. I could be out in the ward a lot more than I am now, and we'd be having committee meetings within the city council, or sometimes in the ward as well. For example, a typical Thriving Places board meeting is held usually in Govanhill Housing Association. This time, it's today. It was held online.
Is there any committee that you sit on, would you say is the most interesting?
Well, I'll be honest, I do enjoy most of the committees. They're so varied, and variety is the spice of life and all that. It's nice to be involved in a broad sense of issues that affect your community, and if you're working on something that affects the local community, and to be able to bring that up at committee and get a positive response, it's very satisfying. Education committee, I do enjoy that as well, and I think that comes from my background, working in FE and HE. So committees that involve elements of science, because I've got a science background, particularly enjoy. I think there's not enough scientists in elected at all levels of government, especially important considering we've got a climate emergency and we've got the COP26. So yeah, education, health, STEM, but by and large, I enjoy most of the kind of broadness of it, and no day's the same.
But then you're Southside Central councillor, and Southside Central is the area that Govanhill is encapsulated by. Yeah. How proud are you to represent Govanhill?
Yeah, I mean, there's without a doubt there are challenges. There's still kind of qualities, but there's a real community spirit about the place, without a doubt. And it's so evident, it's vibrant. It's an area that is diverse for languages, food, different types of clothing. You go down Victoria Road and you can find food from all over the world. So it's an amazing area. Like I said, it has its challenges in terms of the inequality that it experiences. There's no doubt about that, but many positives.
As you will be aware, being the Southside Central councillor, there have been allegations made about the living conditions in Govanhill with regards to things taking place like sex trafficking. But what is your role in the process of when these things are reported? What happens?
Well, if anybody reports that to me, I will go straight to the police. As an elected member, I'm sure every elected member would encourage anyone who is suspicious of any concerns or has any evidence of those concerns to raise them regularly with the police. Some of these allegations have also been discussed with the police in Thriving Place board meetings that take place as well. So any concerns, any suspicions, anything that people may hear, please report them to the police and let them take action if and where it's required.
So, in the police taking action, how involved are you in that process? Do they keep you in the loop because you are an elected representative? Do you play a part in that?
So the police come to Thriving Places board meetings.
Yeah.
So it's something that has been on the agenda with the police before. So there is discussions in the Thriving Places with our various partners. There's elected members, there's housing, there's health, there's a community council representation. So that's something that those discussions can take place as an example at these meetings.
It's good. And the community council, are they quite proactive in dealing with things like this and making sure to reassure the general Govanhill residents that this isn't something that goes on?
I mean, the Govanhill Crosshill Community Council meet, is it every month they meet? They've got a Facebook page as well. They're active in terms of housing. They'll raise issues around housing. They'll raise issues about cleansing, and they discuss various concerns in that impact Govanhill and the Crosshill area. Obviously, issues are raised in social media as well. So if people have issues, and they have previously been raised through social media as well, these can also be passed on to the police as well. So community council does play a role in the area. Like I said, they meet every month. I think usually a Monday in the month they meet.
Just talking about yourself, what is your opinion about these allegations? Do you think that, how much of a cloud do you think it places on the Govanhill community?
I think that Govanhill, and the local community do talk about how there can be so much negative press about Govanhill, and it becomes then an area that people see in a negative view. And these discussions about the negativity around the area, I think the press are more than aware of it. And it does concern the local community because they do raise it and say, or I know people have said to me that, oh God, is it safe for you to be in Govanhill? Is it safe for you to be campaigning in Govanhill? I says, well, I'm in and out the area regularly. So negativity, does follow an area. But I think over time you're seeing that the area is also known for, like I say, when you go down Victoria Road, the impressive. I think, I'm so impressed about the new places that are opening up, the new coffee places, and there's a nice vibe. There's a nice presence in the area. It's an area people actually go to in terms of wanting to go for something to eat because of the variety of food. I like I said, I'm regularly in and out the area, but I know that a lot of my friends and family talk about going into the area for food, for coffee, some amazing coffee places so near the park as well. So I think over time, the area is evolving. I mean, there is poverty, there's inequality, there's still overcrowded housing. There's still, people talk about overcrowded property, 10, 12 people living in 1-2 bedroom flats. So that is, that's a real challenge. There's stark inequality in terms of health. There's barriers, let's not go away from the facts. The facts stand. But there's a lot of positive things about the areas, and there's been a while. For a while, I was reading regularly in the press about the new food places. I'm a bit of a foodie, so and I remember when I was campaigning in 2012, and I was thinking to myself, which areas that I go into specifically go to for foods that I enjoy. I'll go out my way to travel to that section of the city. If I've got a favourite food place or a favourite coffee place, it's something that I will do. And I remember having a conversation as well with an officer quite early on and saying we've got the world's languages in this area. There's so much potential to have the world's foods, clothes. There's so much, and I'm starting to see more and more of that over time. So that's a positive development that I'm pleased to see.
Yeah, and just to round off then about this section, do you think Govanhill is an area that's on an upward trajectory?
I think, as I said, there's improvements. There's definitely, there are improvements, but there are challenges. I don't think we don't want to, we want to look at the facts. There are people still living in poverty. As I said, there's overcrowding. People are still living in properties which is experiencing infestation. So there is improvement still to be made. And the inequality, and I think during the pandemic, we're aware as well of the inequality in terms of the attainment gap, poverty-related attainment gap. There's issues around that as well. And some also experience language barriers. So there are challenges, but there are improvements as well.
What are you most proud of Govanhill and representing Govanhill for, if you had to choose one thing?
I was finding this was last term that my inbox in terms of casework was very busy with casework related to lack of factoring and complaints about there's a flat above me and there's a water leak coming through, or there's a flat across from me, it's so run down, it looks so neglected, it's going into disrepair. There's an issue with my clothes, but it's a common repair, and we really want to get a factor for the clothes, but there's so many private lets here, and that we're not able to, or there's not enough people contributing or committing to a factoring. So these kind of ongoing caseworks, I was finding more and more busy with. So I had conversations with the council, and I said, look, we're having to deal with the symptom of issues. And not all landlords are, neglectful, but there was some. It was an area that had a higher ratio of private lets compared to social housing. So it was about how do we balance that tenure? How do we improve that tenure? And how do we save the properties that are going into there? And, the council was talking about, and they would say to me, we've put significant funds into the area to repair the buildings, and every so many years we're having to put funds over and over again. So it was about trying to get to the root of that problem, so we're not having to deal with the symptom of a problem over and over again. So we sat down and said, look, we need to come up with a plan where we're, like as I said, we increase the factoring within the area. Okay, we're repairing properties. We've got more social housing in the area. We want more landlords that are not taking responsibility for the property or the close as well for common repairs. We want them to take responsibility as well. So the council, in conjunction with the Scottish Government, came up with a Govanhill acquisition programme. It was a multi-million programme. It's quite groundbreaking. It was, like I said, in the last term. It was in when Labour was running the city council, and it's well documented. And this was about, we're going to set up a system where private lets, landlords and private lets are given a certain amount of time to bring their properties and their flats that are in disrepair. Okay? If they don't bring the flats that are in disrepair below a tolerable standard to a housing tolerable standard, these properties will be acquired. And if required, also repurchased. So what that's meant is, over the years, this programme is still in place. That's meant that substandard private sector properties have now come into social housing. So the local housing association, an example being Govanhill, and now have acquired these properties. So what we're seeing over time is we're also seeing clauses factored as well. So when people were coming to me and said, I can't go to my factor about this because we don't have a factor, these clauses have now been factored. So those type of complaints have decreased. There has definitely been a decrease, and there's been improvement, and there is an ongoing, there's still work to be done, but there is improvement in the housing stock in the area. And then through the Scottish Parliament, the housing bill was amended to allow for an enhanced enforcement area. And Govanhill is the first area in Scotland to be designated enhanced enforcement. And that gave the City Council more powers to be able to do spot checks on private lets and say the landlords and say, have you got such and such requirements before you let out your property, for example, in certain to ensure that the property was meeting the required criteria. So it was additional powers to the local authority. Like I said, it was the first time it was done. So it was done over a certain number of streets, which has enhanced over the time. So we expanded that over time as well, which means there has been an improvement again in the area. And for me, I think that's something that should be available Scotland wide. That is something that shouldn't be that you ask for more powers. That should be standard, that you have the power to improve and ensure homes are within a tolerable standard. So that's something I'm particularly proud of, because I'm very aware of what substandard property poverty and inequality can do the quality of life of people, not only the ones that live in those properties, but the neighbours as well, because they're subjected sometimes to the substandard. For example, leaks that are coming in, potentially infestation. If one property is in disrepair and there's infestation in one property, can migrate to the other flats as well. So these things, I think, kind of go hand in hand. So that I would say has been significant for the area.
That's amazing. So that's been put in place, and then it turns out that you've made Govanhill like the trailblazing area for that to then become hopefully a Scotland-wide policy in years to come.
Yeah, so that's certainly, it was something that I was campaigning for and I was working for, and it's been, like I said, it was done, I think it was 2014 was the year that it first started. You can search it on Google as well, you'll see it was documented Govanhill acquisition programme, multi-million collaboration with a collaboration between Glasgow City Council and the Scottish Government, and that acquisition programme has been successful. Hundreds of properties have gone through that, and now it's still continued. So yeah, it's something that I'm pleased about, because I just remember the frustration and the anguish that I could feel from the casework and people coming to my surgeries and complaining about the challenges. And I've lived in tenements. I know what it's like. If you've got you're living in a closet, it can be great. I love tenemental living. But if you've got issues within a close, and if you've got leaks, and if you've got a ceiling that's come in and it's common repair that's not getting done, it can be pretty nightmarish as well.
Excellent. Fast forward then, you've been the councillor for 9 years now, but we're in 2021 and we've recently just had the Scottish Parliament election. Now, talk to me a bit about Anas Sarwar. How were you in favour of him being elected as the leader?
Yes, I campaigned for Anas to be the leader, Anas Sarwar was the MP for Glasgow Central.
Yeah.
So during the same time, I have been the councillor for Southside Central, and Southside Central is an area that is part of Glasgow Central constituency. So I worked with Anas previously for challenges in Govanhill, and he was instrumental. And he also worked on the Govanhill acquisition programme, and so I worked with Anas in the past.
How would you summarise his time as leader?
The campaign he's brought a lot of energy. He's held a energetic and focused campaign and focused on COVID recovery, which I'm really pleased about, because my casework and the type of casework that I have received during the pandemic has changed. Life has changed. And we need to focus on COVID recovery. For me, it is without a doubt a priority. So I was very pleased about the priorities that he presented, and I think he ran a good campaign.
And as you say, talking about the COVID recovery, do you think that's Labour's main role in opposition, just making sure that that's pushed and holding the SNP to account to make sure it doesn't become another independence cloud hanging over the Parliament, that they have to focus on getting the country off its knees?
Oh God, improving the quality of life and life chances, that's got to be a priority. It worries me when furlough ends, what this means for children and families in Glasgow. Obviously Scotland's potentially impacted. Concerns me about how the impact of COVID on learners, the attainment gap, on the reality is that learners have been out of school. they have missed out on that learning experience they would have had pre-COVID. For example, with STEM subjects, lab work. Yeah, I mean, being in the lab was part of the reason that I was so, I fell in love with chemistry, the practical side of it, and learners have missed some practical elements. So there's gaps, and there are gaps. Will be the mental health impact on learners. Their life chances. They've had to experience the SQA fiasco last year. Young learners came out to George Square and they were saying, wait a minute, why should my postcode determine my life chances? They had to fight, and it's something they should not have had to do. You should not have had to experience that ever, never mind a pandemic. So these are real life affecting issues that need to be focused on. The health, my goodness, here's so much about mental health. Here's so much about mental health and how it has impacted people short term and long term. Even my cousin's husband passed away during COVID. I wasn't able to go to the funeral. I wasn't able to see my cousin till recently, and even wasn't able to hug her still, but to say, oh my God, and she wasn't able to be at her husband's bedside. She says, I just want to hold his hand. And she goes, because she knew he was dying, and she couldn't, and we couldn't go. And just things like that so many families, they've been able to have experienced bereavement and trauma and isolation. It's been a tough time for many. It has been a tough time, and I think the focus has got to be recovery, improving the quality of life and life chances.
I wanted to ask you about that because it's a fairly recent thing, because when I put together the questions, the SQA has since been told that it's going to disband. What's your take on that? I guess you've been a secondary teacher. You probably know a bit more about the ins and outs of the SQA. So what's your take on it now going to be dissolved?
I think even when it gets dissolved, the replacement, we need to get the replacement right. We can't be having this conversation. Do you know what I mean? This is an opportunity now. Just like when the curriculum for excellence came in, I felt that here's an opportunity. We must make sure we get it right. No knee-jerk reactions. Let's get this right. Let's listen to the teachers. Let's listen to the educators. Let's listen to the learners and get this right. It's an opportunity. We don't want to be having the same conversations over and over again. So it's an opportunity. We must get it right.
It's okay if you sort of say the SQA is the problem and you take away the SQA, that's fine. But what are you then bringing in to replace it? That's more important than what you're taking away. There's no point in, if you replace the SQA with something equally as bad, then you're just 2 steps forward and 3 steps back.
Yeah, we just create more frustration. Just creates more frustration, and just it's going back the way. So let's make sure we get this right. And I think education's a route out of poverty. If it wasn't for me going through receiving the education in Glasgow, giving me so much, I wouldn't be here today. I get to think where I would have been, but it was the fact that I went on to university. I was able to get those prospects, and somebody from Anderston, first generation, has been able to achieve the qualifications and work in those various roles, and here I am today. And I believe every child should have that opportunity. Glasgow gave me that opportunity. Every child, irrespective of your race, your religion, your background, should have that opportunity.
In your opinion, is there or is there not a mandate for India F2?
In my opinion, the priority has got to be COVID recovery.
Yeah.
It's got to be COVID recovery. I mean, this is what my second term. Over 9 years being an elected member, constituents that are writing to me in Southside Central. Yeah, they're writing to me about bins. They're writing to me about infestation. They're writing to me about food poverty. They're writing to me about the environment. They're not writing to me and saying, when is the next referendum? That's what I'm seeing day to day. I'm seeing, I've got, my inbox is pretty busy with how is the bulk charge going to work in Govanhill? We've already got an issue with fly tipping. How will this bulk charge actually improve it? I've had caseworks around children's education. It's about improving quality of life and life chances. That has got to be the priority. I mean, we're not even out of this pandemic yet. There's still concerns about rising numbers. There's a worldwide vaccination programme going on. There's so much uncertainty around what happens when the furlough ends. There's businesses, people who have put their blood, sweat and tears into businesses, and I know how that feels because I've worked in shops. The hard work that goes into setting up businesses and working all sorts of hours. I don't know if the business is going to be, but it's going to be viable in the future because of having to shut down. There's so many sectors, that are talking about, oh, we're struggling, we need support. And this is about the short-term and long-term impact on the economy and quality of life for our fellow Glaswegians.
Okay, that's a good answer. So it should be, Indie Ref should be put on the back burner or not pursued at all, just focus on the COVID recovery?
Focus on COVID recovery, focus on improving lives. There's cancelled appointments. The NHS has obviously been focused on COVID, health, mental health, heart disease, cancer. Let's focus on building our country. Let's focus on building our city. That's got to be our priority.
Good. And one last question to finish off about the politics aspect. It's an interesting one. If you had to choose one policy that the SNP have brought in their term in Parliament that has been a good thing, what would you say?
I believe education, as I said, for me, education is the root out of poverty, and they did say that education was going to be their judges on our education record, but sadly if you look at the reports, the audit reports, that's not been, to me it's a missed opportunity. I think education could have been an opportunity to improve the quality of life and life chances, but if you look at that again, another missed opportunity. When it comes to health as well, missed targets. We're now at a situation where the SQA situation, that's in disarray as well during a pandemic. So the inequalities and the cracks during the pandemic, they've just become more and more visible and more stark. So missed opportunities. The record's not been flourishing. And if you look at the facts, and I'm a scientist, I need to see facts. I need to see the numbers. I need to see the data. I need to see the graph. Don't give me the spin. Give me the facts.
Good. That's the way it should be. That's the we deal in facts and figures. That's the way to go.
To yourself, you have those conversations with your students, but you've added that together. 4 + 4 is such and such, so you'll have those conversations. Let's deal with the facts.
So as we know that we've got coming up in the autumn, the COP26, and the way that they're doing it, so you're talking about your science, you're a science lady. So in our school, our first topic that we study next year is a STEM topic, the full school. So this is what we're doing for COP. So COP is coming to Glasgow. Is the city fit and ready to host such a prestigious event?
Oh, I do. We've had these conversations in the council, and I've raised it as well. Concerned about the cleansing side of things. I'm concerned that this is a massive opportunity to showcase Glasgow as a leading light in terms of the environment. But I'm worried about fly tipping. I'm worried about streets not being cleared. That really does need to be addressed. I also think that we have some world-renowned universities, Glasgow University, we've got Strathclyde University, to give a couple of examples. We've got universities, with this Caledonian University as well, and we've got Paisley just at the outskirts. So we've got, and they're doing cutting-edge research. Yeah, they're world-renowned for the research they do. People come from all over the world. What I would like to see is their ideas, their hypotheses, potential hypotheses, their or their, for example, the spin-off companies that have come from academia, or companies that have got ideas, that are doing cutting-edge research, that have got cutting-edge ideas with regards to, say, hydrogen as a fuel, with regard to recycling and so forth. That should be, to me, we should be on the world stage talking about that. Glasgow is leading in A, B, C, and D. And we are in many sectors, and we should be talking about that more. We should be showing the world what we are leading in, because when these dignitaries and when these academics and when other countries from all over the world visit Glasgow, these are opportunities for us to showcase the wonderful city and that it is. the advancements in technology that we are proposing, that we are making, that we are researching on. And Glasgow should be, like I said, it's a massive opportunity to showcase that. And I do worry that it must be maximised. And I've had that conversation recently in the council, that we have got to maximise these collaboration opportunities, research collaboration opportunities, and also the learners from Glasgow schools. We've had these conversations at the committee as well. The Glasgow learners, they are our future. They have fantastic ideas. They must be front and central of COP26. Give them that opportunity to showcase their STEM ideas, to learn about the future as well. So they are a future. And it's the young ones that have come out and said, this is our planet. We want to live in this planet. We want to live healthily in this planet. They've come out in the streets. They are the future. They must be front and central of this. So yeah, I think that there must be a systemic legacy that continues from this, and it must be Glasgow-wide. It cannot be specific areas. My concern is that it needs to be, irrespective of what area you're in Glasgow, whether it's an area of deprivation, whatever the SIMD is of the area, that you should have equal opportunity to present, showcase, and be involved in STEM, because it is the future. These green jobs are the future, and our Glasgow learners must be front and central. They must be part of the change. They must be part of the ideas, the discussions, and the green jobs of the future.
Excellent answer, and I completely agree. And it's the learners being front and centre.
I do apologise. It's something I feel quite passionately about. I just think that and I did say to education that every school must be involved in this.
No, you're speaking to a teacher. You can rant as much as you want. I'm all. We're on the same team here. Sorry, we're on the same team. But no, that's. I think that is really, because I see it as well, that how important that I know our school is taking it. I'm quite general as a person. I don't get too high with the highs, don't get too low with the lows. But this COP coming up, I can see it being really, really, really important, and absolutely. it's a hit or a miss for our city.
Yeah, we were in the world. It's an opportunity to showcase the strengths of our wonderful city, and
yes,
and the city must be clean and green, and loud and proud about its achievements and its future.
And how do you? So there obviously are issues with it being clean and green. Like it's not clean and green in all areas just now. Is that an issue at the SNP council level, or is it a governmental issue?
When you look at Glasgow City Council's funding model, millions have been taken out of the funding. Austerity, without a doubt, has impacted that funding model. So when departments are cut in year in, year out, cut to the bone now, and the cleansing staff talk about when people retire within specific departments, they don't get replaced. Not enough people on the streets cleansing are feeling the pressure. I mean, I was in my ward in Southside Central last week. I was in a back court speaking to one of the residents, and she was raising the issues that she's experiencing, and was with the neighbourhood officer. We were talking about the challenges that she was experiencing, and we were coming up with ideas about how we will help her improve that. And I went out in the street and I was speaking to a street sweeper, and he said to me, and I was like saying, look, this street, I was saying to the neighbourhood officer, this street's not been swept, and there was a bit of a discussion around how regular the streets are being swept. And I said, look, I don't want to start to bring my STEM into it, but I could do a forensic analysis on some of those items to confirm that they've been lying here for months, just based on the decay. So say there was a pack of piss, but the way it's decayed can tell you that it's not just been dropped, say 1 hour ago, it's been dropped, or not that people should be dropping it, or whatever, the dirt that's been there has been there, and it's been decaying for months, some of it, from what I can see. And the street sweeper, I really felt for him. He says, I'm stretched. He says, I get calls to go to so many different bits of the city. I start one bit because we're understaffed, we're under-resourced, and you could see the pressure. And I really felt for him. I says, look, he says, my day I'm supposed to be in this area, I'm supposed to be sweeping this area, but, I'm not, sometimes because of lack of manpower, or there's lack of resources in another bit of the city, we're called to the other bits of the city. We're so stretched. We're so stretched. And that's what we're seeing now. Lack of resources. So departments are stretched, lack of manpower on the street, and it's having an effect. There's absolutely no doubt about it, and that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing that day to day in our local communities, and the funding model comes from the Scottish Government. Okay, so and the Glasgow City Council is SNP led, and I stare at it every year, and I didn't stand election to make cuts. I didn't stand election to say, well, cut this, but don't cut this, but it's all about cuts. I want to see investment in Glasgow. See Glasgow reach its maximum potential. And it does. Austerity is having an impact on it. It's having an impact on our local environments and the quality of life of our fellow Glaswegians.
Well done for giving an answer that you've not just given the party political thing and just bashed the SNP, that you've gone in on that and you acknowledge that the council there's strains on the council, that it doesn't matter who is in power, that if the funding model isn't in place, then it doesn't matter who you have in charge, you're fighting, it's an uphill battle, really.
The funding model, yeah. And the thing is, I try not to make it all, but the reality is that the SNP have been in power in Scottish Government for years now, and the funding model does come from there. And again, I'm back at facts. And Westminster has a role. Yeah, let's call it the facts. The Westminster has cut the budget, but if you look at the Scottish Government, so the Scottish Government gets a cut from Westminster. But if you look at the funding model that goes from Scottish Government to Glasgow City Council, it's not the same ratio of cut. They increase the cut that goes to the local authority. So it's about priorities.
Will you be standing again in the council elections of 2022?
Yes, I have said to the party that I'm interested to stand for re-election. So I'm at the mercy of the selectorate. And post-election, assuming that all goes well, I would be at the mercy of the electorate. That's politics. A week is a long time in politics.
If you put yourself in the position and you are getting re-elected, you are nominated to stand next year, what's your message to the people of Govanhill? Why should you be elected for another 5 years?
Well, I think I worked tirelessly. I worked tirelessly for the area. I went from a full-time job to a part-time one to ensure that I can give the commitment that's required. I've got a track record. I would like to think that any constituent that's contacted me is more than aware that I've done my best to ensure that whatever challenge that they're experiencing, that I've tried to help them overcome that challenge. Still got lots of ideas. I've got lots of ideas in education. I've got lots of ideas for the environment. I've got ideas for STEM, inequality, in terms of green ideas as well for the environment. Passionate about the environment and the future of the environment, and I hope that they give me that opportunity to put some of those ideas into practice. So I've got a lot I still want to see improved in the local area in Govanhill, Gorbals, Strathbungoise, and still a lot of ideas and improvements that I want to champion and campaign for to improve the quality of life and the life chances of our fellow Glaswegians.
Looking ahead to the future, after that, would you ever consider standing as an MSP or an MP?
Yeah, I would consider it. I stood in the Scottish Parliament election. I stood in Cathcart. God damn, that's 2015 I stood. So I've stood before. I would consider it. Yeah, I would consider it.
Good. Right, that's me. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Fantastic. So I hope you have a nice break. I know people talk about us having holidays, but you know what? It's nice to get that break, isn't it? Because you feel like you're running on empty towards the end of the term, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like last summer was a fake summer because nothing was open, so it wasn't really it was a break, but you weren't that different to what it actually was when you were working. So no, I'm enjoying it. It'll be a good summer.
With you. So if you enjoy it, let's keep keep safe and healthy, and build up your energy for the next term, because let's hope it's going to be as normal as possible.
True. Can't believe I'm hoping for a full year of work and no interruptions.
I know, I'm the same. I'm like, can I be face to face? Can I be back in the lab? And I thought, who would have thought it?
But no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
So there you have it. Thank you to Soryia for her time and for speaking so openly about all things Govanhill and Glasgow. Keep an eye out for her over the next few months as we head towards COP26 and then into the council elections for next year. The usual bits and bobs to round off. You can keep up to date with upcoming episodes by following @LostForWordsPod on both Twitter and Instagram. If you use a podcast service which allows you to rate and review, please leave a 5-star rating, as it helps massively with the growth of the podcast. All of the support and every single download of the podcast is greatly appreciated. I am your host Jason. This has been Govanhill with Baillie Soryia Siddique. I look forward to seeing you next week for episode 17 of the Lost for Words podcast. Until then, bye bye.